Hi, my name's Rich Harrington, and welcome to this week's edition of Photoshop for Video, brought to you by CreativeCow.net. Today, we're going to take a look at a technique that allows you to do depth of field blurring. Now, normally, depth of field is something you shoot when you're in the field. It's really a combination of how you adjust the camera settings, how much light you let in, the distance between the camera and the subject, all sorts of factors that contribute together. But after the fact, you can add some depth of field in using the lens blur feature inside of Photoshop. Let's see how. Now, I've got a picture opened up here, and you can get these pictures off of the CreativeCow.net website in the podcast area. Let's go ahead and put a depth of field blur in here so the stairs that are farther away fall out of focus. Now, you'll see in this particular photo the foreground stairs are in focus and the background stairs are falling out of focus. But when I shot this picture, it was really bright out, and a lot of light really cuts down on how depth of field behaves. So let's enhance this with some additional depth of field. The first thing we're going to do is add an alpha channel to define the depth map. So we'll go on over to Channels and click New, and we have an alpha channel. Grab the gradient tool and use the black to white gradient. We'll go ahead here and click and drag, and there you go. The white area is going to be in focus, and the black area is going to be out of focus. If you want more out of focus, simply click a little lower and drag like such, and you'll see we've increased the dark area, and that's going to work well. Let's turn that off and go back to our RGB channels, and then we'll just switch over to layers. Now, before running the lens blur, it's a good idea to make a copy of the layer so you can always compare the before and after. To do this, you can just right-click on the layer and say Duplicate, and we'll call this Stairs. So we'll choose Filter, Blur, Lens Blur. Now, this brings up a unique interface, and it's really important to have a large preview area. It's very difficult to judge the lens blur if you're looking at it very small in the preview window. So let's go ahead here and resize this window so it's as big as our canvas. And we can zoom in using the standard keyboard shortcuts, Command plus or minus. Plus will actually zoom you in, minus will zoom you out. There we go. Up top here, preview is selected, so that's great. But what we want to do is say, use the alpha channel as our depth map. There we go. It thinks for a moment and applies it. And if necessary, click the invert box. Let's go ahead and increase the amount of blurring here and see where the blur is occurring. We'll take the radius up a bit. And what I'm noticing is that the foreground is getting blurry. So that's easy. We'll just click the invert button here, and it will reverse. There we go. The background falls out of focus as the foreground is more in focus. We could play with the radius slider here so it looks natural. If it goes too far, just back that off a bit. And play with your distance slider. But that's looking pretty good. Our foreground stairs have remained in focus, while the background falls more out of focus. Another important detail when you start to add lens blur is you're going to want to go ahead and put a little bit of noise in there. So make sure you turn the noise amount up until it looks like natural grain. It's a really good idea to view this at 100 or even 200% magnification, and try to look at an in-focus area and one of the filtered areas. I'll do a nice Gaussian blur here with monochromatic and back that noise amount off until the noise in the blurred areas seems to match foreground. A value of 2 seems to do the trick. We're all set. I can click OK, and it will apply that change to the image. And remember, because we put 2 copies in here, it's really simple. You could toggle off and on to see the before and after, or adjust the opacity to blend between the two. Let's do it one more time. Jump on over to our second image here, and you see we have a very defined area. Let's go ahead and make our selection. I'll just duplicate one of the existing channels and run a levels adjustment on it. Let's push the dark areas really dark and the bright areas really bright. That works well. Grab our paintbrush and simply paint with white. And we could fill in the areas there that we want to work with. That works pretty well. Let's just touch up a little with black here. Smaller brush. And there we have it. Now, what we need to do is define the darker areas here for what's going to be out of focus. So, easy enough. Let's just make a nice selection here in the white area. We could do that with the magic wand. We've got an active selection. Grab our gradient tool, and let's just go ahead and click and drag. There we go. That works well. Grab our paintbrush and just touch it up. And we've got a good selection. Now, I'm going to recommend a quick blurring. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur to just soften that matte out a little bit. There we have it. We'll call that depth. Turn on our regular channels, and let's do the same thing all over again. Back to layers. Quick duplicate, and choose Filter, Blur, Lens Blur. It opens up. Specify that you want to use the depth channel. That works pretty well. Our foreground is now in focus when we turn off invert, but the areas that are farther away up here at the top of the stairs have gone out of focus. We can play with that there. Quick preview and you'll see the difference. So notice, in this particular image, the black areas, which indicate the foreground, as well as the first few stairs, are left untouched, while the white areas, indicating the area at the top of the stairs, have fallen out of focus. This would have been really tough to pull off in the camera because the brighter areas would have wanted to stay in focus. So, this lens blur command, very useful, especially if you want to draw detail, particular area to come out in the photo where you want the viewer's eye to focus, or to make background plates for your compositing projects. My name's Rich Harrington. Hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Photoshop for Video, brought to you by Creative Cow. Be sure to head on over to creativecow.net where you can see me in the Photoshop forum, taking questions and offering answers. Thanks again.